We're going to talk about passwords. Ooh, everybody's favorite subject, passwords. But this article is quite interesting. It says the logic behind 3 random words. So the National Cybersecurity Center out of the UK, they published this tool actually that you can go to, and it will generate 3 random words for helping people with their passwords. So let's look at a few of their comments about why they think this is important. Because what passwords have become is lowercase, uppercase, number, symbol, but that's very arbitrary. That's not like how the human mind thinks. And so that's the rationale. That's the idea here, right? And so the other way of doing it with the upper, lower, and the symbol, that is arbitrary complexity requirements is what they're saying. It's just arbitrarily trying to make it complex. And let's try to think of something that goes along with the human mind so that we help people to be successful in this versus dictating to them something that is hard and difficult and cumbersome and then maybe don't see the value. That's the intent of the article that they're talking about. And so to help people come up with a random word strategy for home and at work, so it helps your business but also people, of enforcing complexity requirements, but they're saying that the old school of upper, lower, symbol, and number is really a poor defense against guessing attacks because guess what? Our minds, this is what they say, our minds struggle to remember random character strings. So automatically we make it very difficult on people by imposing this upper, lower, number, symbol, make something up. Oh, and by the way, people don't have 1 passwords. They may have 20 passwords or 50 passwords. So the more difficult we make it for them, the more they'll find a different way to do it. And that's the whole point of this. It actually works against making it more complex because they start doing silly things like putting it in Notepad or using the same password on everything. And that's bad. And that really actually reduces your security posture. And so that's kind of the point of this is let's give people a tool to help them be successful with passwords, to help them pick the right ones, to help them remember it. And so mathematically, they've figured out that people can more readily remember these past phrases of words that go together, and then this tool that randomly generates 3 words together, which would make it harder for a hacker because 1, it's longer because it's 3 random words, and it's words that don't go together. So even though hackers obviously know about the dictionary, and they obviously catalog dictionary words, duh, of course they do, but not in those combinations. So if it's random 3 words that would never be logically used together, the human brain can remember that because of the absurdity of it, but guess what? It doesn't make sense to a hacker, and it tends to be longer. It tends to be easier to remember, to type in, and then people are less prone to writing it down or sharing it across multiple accounts. And so that's kind of the point of this, which is really great information. So counterintuitively, the enforcement of complexity requirements, that's talking back to the symbol, the number, the lower, and the upper, it's actually makes for passwords to be more predictable. So here's the other side of it. Mathematically, I remember going to a conference years ago. Mathematically, if I know anything about your password, it's easier to break than if I know nothing. And so it's really interesting. I have this other chart here that we'll post in the video. But it's basically, it's really quite shocking. If you use lower, upper, a number, and a symbol, but it's only 6 characters long, did you know it can be hacked instantly? Instantly. Okay, well, then you would say, well, nobody would do a 6-character password. Well, guess what? 8 is kind of the standard, right? That can be hacked in 8 hours. It's not very long for a hacker, and these algorithms run and are able to break that. If it's 12 characters long, the same password, lower, upper, number, symbol, 12 characters long, it'll take 34,000 years. So 8 characters, 8 hours, 12 characters, 34,000 years. Okay, so what's the lesson here? The lesson here is length. Make it longer. It's harder to guess. The other thing they're saying in the article is if I know your password is set up to require an upper, a number, and a symbol. Guess what? I build that into my hacking strategy, and then these numbers go down. These times to break the passwords go down. So it actually makes it less secure to dictate that. It's better to train people. It's better to help them to see the value, and then to guide them into tools and teaching and disciplines to be more successful. That's the better approach with all of this stuff. This passwords, we're just talking about that in particular. They also talk about password managers. So these are the tools that are used to store your passwords securely. So what do we tell people? Oh, make up this ridiculous password you can never remember. You can't use it anywhere else. And don't write it down and don't store it anywhere. Have fun with that. Okay, well, that's unrealistic. So what do people do? They start doing all sorts of other stuff. So password managers, that's a great thing to do at a company. We know you can't remember all these passwords. We know this is difficult. So guess what? We've given you a safe mechanism, and here's the instruction for how to properly secure your password. Or a lot of those actually generate the password for you, so I don't even have to know what it is. I just click the button and it fills it in. So if you want to get fancy, you can do that at your company as well. But the point is, we've given people no mechanisms. We've made this very difficult for them, and then we've given them no mechanisms to do it properly, which is exactly the intent of this article. And it goes on to talk about, what does make a good password. Length, obviously, as I just gave this example of the longer the password, the harder it is to break. I'll just tell you personally and professionally, our passwords are at least 18 characters long. So if a 12 character password takes 34,000 years to break, how long do you think an 18 character password takes? Longer. Never in our lifetime, right? So that's the name of the game. But then you got to be able to remember it because you're typing this thing in all the time. So length is really super important. You want to encourage your people to long passwords. The longer the better, as long as they can remember it. You want to give them tools and give them a technique that they can quickly understand, they can maintain, they can wrap their mind around. It helps them, and that's what they're doing here with this 3 random word generator. You want to give them, the other reason they're saying these 3 random words is it's novelty. It's something that hasn't been done before, 3 random words together. Sometimes people use like a movie quote as part of their passphrase. That's great. It's going to be long probably, and they're going to remember it, but guess what? A movie quote is something that a hacker can also catalog, right? And they can reverse engineer the password. And so it's a good idea. It's long, it's good, but they're constantly looking for like common things. Well, a movie quote would be an obvious common thing. 3 random words, it's a novel idea. It's not common. So hackers don't have every combination of 3 words in the dictionary. And so that's the mindset behind this. And then usability, as we've talked about. We don't want people to reuse their passwords. It's a huge security vulnerability, like huge, that people would reuse their passwords, but they do it all the time, which is terrible for them personally, but it's terrible for our companies as well. And so we want to give them mechanisms that they can be successful, so they are deterred naturally from doing things like password reuse or putting their password in Notepad because they can never remember it. So that's the last point here in the article. And I love this statement they say: security that's not usable doesn't work. It's great. It looks good on paper. Complex passwords. Check. Yes, absolutely. Yay, we do this. That's great. I'm not saying you shouldn't do complex passwords. However, if your people don't understand it and they're finding ways to work around it, guess what? Security that's not usable doesn't work. So the effectiveness of that control of complex passwords that you think is in place is not as in place as much as you think, because you haven't gone the extra step to educate and give people tools and give people ways to navigate this and include this as part of your training. And so that's the whole intent of this article. It doesn't have to be 3 random words. It's not what I'm saying, but it is a very interesting approach to crack open the idea of going beyond checking the box of complex passwords and really helping people understand what that means. Because if you do not help them to do the security controls effectively, they're not doing the job that you expect, and they're not mitigating the risk that you're expecting them to mitigate.